Welcome to Writer's Lunch. We always want to make sure to I get to this promptly. Start at 1, aka 105, whatever works. I always appreciate you joining us on this weekly Thursdays 1 p.m. And Shannon, thank you so much for getting our videos edited and putting them up for regular videos on YouTube. Yay, traction is good. Like and subscribe, whatever. I sorry, that was bad.
All right, well,
Uh,
since you're going to be silly about it, so we are Toneworks Edits on pretty much all social media. We do have a new Substack. You can follow us on our newsletter, which is the Toneworks Forge, and I will add that into the chat in just a second, so you can see more than just these, but other blogs, notifications, things around Houston and Dallas that are coming up, and that kind of
Yay. Yes, we're going trans Texas. We're going to get the whole state eventually. Absolutely. Got to take our pilgrimage to Armadillo Con in the fall, perhaps, and hang out in Austin. I Today let's talk about TV Brain. Oh, actually, never mind. What are we doing next week?
Next week,
Anna?
next week is me. Next week, I'm going to be just going over some tips and tricks to help you improve like your writing craft. So if you are trying to improve your craft and you feel like you've hit a wall, or you just don't really know where to begin with improving your craft, come join us and we'll talk a little bit about that. Should be fun.
I love it when a couple of writers' lunches, like dovetail with each other. And so I really hope that this diagnoses an issue that you may find in your own writing, and then Anna will help you get out of the pit for sure. My so TV Brain, why writers need to be readers. This is going to be based on a lot of writing by Lincoln Michel, who is an author and has a Substack. That'll definitely plug at the end. Called Countercraft, and it's a lot about the craft of writing and I also just being a social media person. I talking about the discourse in the literary thing. It's kind of fallen apart in Twitter. He's still there, but on Blue Sky and stuff, and there's always just so many opinions out there. So this is based on two of his blog posts that I think are really important and that I have seen both in writing things as well as in editing others for sure. First off, to say hi, I'm Sean Carroll. You can always catch me, Sean, at tomeworksedits.com. In person, also at the Houston Poetry and Arts Fest on April 25th at the Orange Show, and at Comicpalooza, where the literary panels are held on the third floor of George R. Brown Convention Center. And I have a surprise for that I'll hopefully be able to announce. But if you catch me in person, then that'll be very helpful. Comicpalooza is held on Memorial Day weekend. Other than that, let's talk about what TV Brain is, because yes, as Anna said, what is it really? Are we able to describe what it is? So TV Brain Prose, it's influenced primarily by narrative visual media, TV, film, TikToks, video game cutscenes, etc., without engaging in the narrative possibilities and limitations of prose fiction. We live in a visual culture, and writers who don't read widely tend to absorb their understanding of narrative from visual media. This is not a critique of film or TV or anything else. The point is that artistic mediums have different possibilities and limitations. If you try to make your novel a series of transcriptions of imagined TV scenes, it will fail at being either good TV or a good novel. This is taken from What Not Reading Does to Your Writing, and absolutely that's one of his free ones up there on his Substack. Here's the other one, Turning Off the TV in Your Mind. They're both related. My theory is that we live in an age of visual narratives, and that increasingly warps how we write. Film, TV, TikToks, and video games are culturally dominant. Most of us learn how stories work through visual mediums. I've watched a ton of YouTubes about writing. This is how our brains have been taught to think about story, and so this is how we write. We're going to try and break out of that. So, this is another thing to say as well. If it is in regular prose and then some of it is italics, the italics is my commentary on what Michel was saying. So how do you think in prose instead of TV? First, adjust your inputs. Read more and watch less. Study great books and look at how the masters deploy diction, details, syntax, and structure. In your own writing, pay attention to sounds and sentences, how information is ordered, and how a reader will experience the story word by word and paragraph by paragraph. This is why I am a big advocate for reading outside your genre, especially poetry and works in translation. The tendency to fall back on imagined lessons from a small sample set of prose you enjoy thoroughly and other mediums can make it feel like you are writing in the correct way, but it's straying far from original intent as your mind bounces between a limited amount of examples and assumes more than it understands. This is a psychological concept, the little bit that you know about somebody or about some situation can lead to the Dunning-Kruger effect. To learn to photograph, you need to learn to think in angles and apertures. To learn to paint, you begin to think in brushstrokes and pigments. And to learn to write fiction, you start to think in sentences, POV, and other aspects of narrative prose. This takes a lot of time. Time studying and time practicing. No, there are never any shortcuts there. Practice, practice, practice. David Sedaris finds hilarious memoir stories by interacting with others and taking notes as he goes about his life. Octavia Butler was inspired by her daily bus commute through downtown Los Angeles, observing people and places. The seed of Game of Thrones was planted by George R.R. Martin's visit to Hadrian's Wall. These authors live, observe, absorb lessons from reading, and adapt their narratives. Then they edit, read aloud, get feedback, and rewrite. Authorship is an ecosystem. None of these steps are able to be skipped. There are not any shortcuts. So here are some TV brain pitfalls, and then we'll go through them and have some examples. Avoid describing every moment. Remember, written characters don't have actors. You are the Lord of Time. Interiority, interiority, interiority. POV isn't a camera on the wall. And repeated repetition and redundancy. So, we're going to start with avoid describing every moment, and this is from one of Michelle's blogs. One might assume that what TV prose loses in depth, it would make up for in speed. That the stripped down text would move at a quicker pace, because perhaps one more geared to the modern short attention span mind. And in theory, but in practice, TV prose can be more cluttered with filler sentences because writers describe more than they need to. The occasional montage aside, most TV scenes play out in real time. If a character gets a glass of water, they perform every movement, open the cabinet, pulling out the glass, turning on the faucet, filling the glass. So writers who are jotting down a TV scene in their mind likewise enumerate these actions. Farrah got up and walked over to the cabinet, reached inside and withdrew a tall glass. She then turned on the faucet and filled the glass. She took a sip. Such banal moments are tedious in prose. Unless there is a point to the tedious description, I don't know, like there's a Martian carefully studying human movements, a simple, she got a glass of water is probably all you need. So here's what I took from r/writers, and before we lose her off to her other errands that she's running, Shannon, would you be interested in reading this short snippet?
I mean, if I came across this, no, I would not be interested in reading it, but okay. Zachary steps off his dark blue motorcycle, short, straight black hair blowing in the wind, and walks to the swinging doors of the bar with a hanging neon sign saying Moonlight Rim. Looking around on my screen it's like backing up and back. Looking around, analyzing everything. He sees an open bar stool, so he wanders over. Calling the bartender over, he says in a soft voice, "May I have a rum and coke, thanks?" He sits there looking at the decor around the room with his dark brown eyes gazing at each one. He sees a sky blue Chevy bumper, an old farmhouse photo starting to crumble with age, and a colorful jukebox. He makes his way over to the jukebox, each step from his black, slightly heeled boots echoing in the wooden floorboards. He takes out 50 cents from his black jeans and puts it in the machine. The machine's bright colors of blue and red and pinks bounce off of him, making his face an array of colors. He reaches his hand towards the machine, picking a song. As he walks back to his seat, where his drink is sitting eerily untouched, except by the bartender who set it there, he gets an uncomfortable feeling in his stomach, as if someone might be watching him. Alas, he shoves it off and picks up the clear glass as the liquor sloshes about. He had been to the Moonlight I apologize. He has been at Moonlight Rim for about 15 minutes now, and he hears his song finally coming up from the queue. Oh, sorry. The way they spell Q. Air Supply starts playing in the background. He starts reminiscing about the times he had with his lover. Now all the memories he had with her are just old dreams that never came true. He's looking around now, still feeling that eerie uncomfortableness. However, now that feeling in his stomach has become something more. He is starting to feel lightheaded and sick to his stomach. He starts for the bathroom, hunched over when he gets intercepted by a woman in a short crop top, her breast popping out of the top, and small black shorts. She asks for him to come with her to her convertible parked outside, as she just lives down the street. And she offered for him to stay there with apology. My brain wants to fix this. She offered for him to stay there with him while he rests up. He refuses the offer and pushes by her to the bathroom, feeling like he couldn't hold it much longer. He finally makes it down the hallway to the bathroom, which feels like forever, when he suddenly passes out. He wakes up naked in the back alley of the bar, feeling vulnerable and scared. No kidding, buddy.
So, I want to know y'all's thoughts on this. You know, the first lesson thing, the do not describe every moment. That's pretty obvious. That entire first paragraph is just one after the next movements. But do you recognize this in your own work? Is there anything else about this that bothers you? Do you feel that camera POV, you know, and that this person is imagining things in scenes like that?
The first thing for me, there are too many adjectives. Way too, way too many adjectives. I was like, Shannon was reading the first few sentences, and we got dark blue motorcycle, short straight black hair, right after each other. Um, I mean, swinging doors and hanging neon sign wouldn't bother me if we didn't have those first two. Um, Sky blue Chevy bumper, like, I mean, it's too dark brown eyes, like, okay, like, come on, we gotta like move forward, stop with all the adjectives, just move forward through the scene. That's the main thing for me that bothered me with this.
I mean, it's harder to read both out loud. Like that was actually surprisingly difficult, in part because my dog was tap dancing to go outside. But like, um, the way you normally have a cadence in how you speak, the amount of adjective loading, the way that there was like so much circuitous prose, like my brain naturally wants to end a sentence, but the sentence continues on for like 3 lines.
These will be difficult to read. Yes, the examples that I have, they're going to be difficult. I apologize ahead of time, but hey, that's
I
how
know,
you.
but I mean, like, as a reader, I would have a hard time reading this. Like, I would have a hard time focusing and actually figuring out what the point of the sentence is. And it turns out, like, when you read it, like, almost none of this information, I mean, it doesn't really set tone. Yeah, it gives some visual, but it doesn't help me understand the story. And so, like, I'm feeling like I'm either missing something, or the author doesn't know what they're doing.
And that can be a thing as well. Even though there are so many words on the page, I feel like this author thinks that there is more being said in here with their implications. Things like the drink, is uncomfortably sitting on the bar untouched. I'm like, but why? Like, what does this even mean? It very much might have some personal meaning or a moment that they experienced before. The thing I would love to pick on is the woman with her breasts boobling. As he is trying to go to the restroom and has an entire conversation with this woman that would have been, a blip, let's say, in TV language or whatever. But there would have been so many visual cues about this woman just even giving him a wink and being in a certain outfit that would imply possibly all of these things. But no, that does not work in a prose way.
The which I did laugh when you said breast boobling or whatever. Everyone who has their cameras on all hung their heads at the same time. I was like looking and I saw everyone just like make a face all at once. But like it's true, right? And like the other thing that we're kind of getting here is we're getting like an exact blow by blow description of everything he's doing. which like it's interesting for me because I did mention in the chat, like when I'm writing a scene, I am visualizing that scene in my head. And so this, like to me, the blow by blow type of thing is what the scene is looking like in my head. And sometimes when I'm in my first draft, I have to catch myself because I start writing that. I start writing the, and then she got up and then she walked over to the other side of the room and she grabbed this thing and then she walked back to the table. I was like, no. So like when I'm like in the middle of like a first draft, I often am stopping myself because I do start writing out exactly what I'm envisioning in my head, which is the blow by blow. Um, so yeah, but it's just interesting to like, kind of make that
This
connection.
To analyze
sorry,
it.
I didn't mean to
Yes.
stop over you.
Yeah, yeah.
This is something that you're probably going to get into, but the encapsulation of the scene doesn't show any experiences or life lived outside of it. And I think that's one of those hallmarkers of somebody who's not accustomed to writing prose. We don't get a sense why he came to the bar. We don't get a sense of what his day was like beforehand. There are often very easy ways to like give a sense of a character that is lived in or that is real. But this dude's a blank slate. He just shows up at the bar. Maybe he had a great day. Maybe he got a raise. Maybe he had a terrible day. Maybe his girlfriend left him. Maybe the mob's after him and he just screwed up something. We have no clue. Like there's no contextual detail. Um, why this woman would roofie him, we don't know. His experience of being roofied is oddly externalized. Like we get that he has a feeling of being sick, but we don't actually get a sense of what it's like to lose consciousness as somebody who's been roofied. And I don't want to be a dick about it, but his description of what it is like to be roofied is incorrect. But that aside, or presuming, it's not a roofie, maybe it is something that, he's sick and they're stealing his kidney, whatever. It's just very much surface, right? And you get that because TV doesn't show you internalization or what a person is feeling. And sometimes you're supposed to get context from the external information that's visual, but you don't realize what it was you picked up. And then it doesn't show up on the page when you write it.
And that expands those paragraphs out immensely. I'm going to move on to the next one as well. We'll have more things to pick apart for sure. So, another one on there. Remember, written characters don't have actors. One feature of TV prose is a lot of attention paid to the things that your eye notices on TV, such as actors' faces and outfits. So there are no actors on the page. Your prose is, for better or worse, only words. Watching your favorite actors cheer and clap for 2 seconds of TV works differently than reading 2 whole paragraphs of Ross clapped and then pumped his fist, Chandler jumped and slapped Joey's shoulder, Monica, and that's even before getting into the actors' outfits, which would also take much longer to describe in prose than to see. Sometimes there'll be a reason to describe a character's clothes at length. I always think of American Psycho's brand name laden outfit descriptions to editorialize as well. Who is it? The James Bond novels very much go into detail about opulence and stuff like that. But normally it is better to be selective with your character details in prose. 1 to 3 repeated visual details might be better conjure a character in the reader's mind than an item by item and feature by feature list that in prose will likely be confusing and quickly forgotten. Anna, as you picked up on so many adjectives, absolutely. Maybe I will read this one here, which felt like a good example after that. The actors, I just can't shake this feeling that I'm being hunted, like something is watching me, or, I don't know, waiting for me to break again? And then what? What do I do then? No dialogue tag. Zachary had been here a long time before I showed up to my first meeting. I'd heard plenty of stories from him since then about his struggles with getting close to people, how he'd always felt destined to hurt someone. He never seemed the type personally. Zach seemed like a good guy, at least the version of him I met on Tuesdays anyway. Some people can't help but put on a face when they go out in public. I can attest to that. No one needs to know what's under the hood as long as the paint's fresh and shiny. Still, I had a hard time imagining Zach actually hurting anyone. You get a good sense for that kind of thing after you've been exposed to it for a while, and in this case, my sense is well honed. Our bodies have a way of holding on to strong feelings sometimes, explained Cameron, ever the diligent mediator in his Argyle sweater. He had taken over as head of the support group a year before and had saved it from nearly disbanding. People felt comfortable around him, enough to open up to the room when they otherwise would have stayed silent. The auditorium was cramped and the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, but things felt at ease when he spoke. He was a natural. Those feelings have a way of bubbling back up after things have a chance to settle down. You get so used to the danger and the panic that even after it's passed, your brain has a hard time believing it. So it stays prepared, and it doesn't take much to trigger it. Have you tried? I first found this group when an old fling gave me an ultimatum to get help or get out, as she delicately put it. And when I did get help and didn't instantly become whatever version of myself she wanted me to be, she kicked my ass to the curb. I kept going every Tuesday, though. It's nice to see the same faces and have a schedule to stick to. It helps. Even if I'm not the type to pour my heart out and sob in front of everybody, it helps. And how are you, Riley? Cameron had turned to face me, meaning everyone had turned to face me. How have things been this past week? How'd things go with Hannah? Um, I feel like this prose is better, but also at the same time, uh, there's a lot that is put into dialogue that could be better explained through character motivation, through interiority. This, in the same way that TV does, has the characters saying things out loud that they more likely than not would have possibly thought instead of, putting it out there. Anybody else thoughts on this passage at all?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the dialogue kind of feels like as you know, Bob, which is like it's a common thing to happen in prose where a character is explaining something in dialogue that, like you said, would either be better shown in a different way, or something that a character that is being having this explained to them should already know. So it feels a little bit like that, but it also felt to me like there was too much interiority here. Like it leaned too hard the other way. Like the all of this interior narrative that was going on was interrupting the actual scene. And so there's nothing actually really happening here except this character thinking about stuff and it's like totally interrupting what else is going or like what looks like it's supposed to be going on there in this meeting. So it kind of feels like it leans a little bit too hard into the interiority aspect.
And that time thing, of like every single thing being said, like every single thing, every single thought that's happening, this has stretched out 30 seconds, maybe a minute and a half into a large amount of prose.
Yeah.
Anybody else have thoughts, things that they have come up in this example at all? All right.
I have one more thing to
Please.
kind of add. I don't want to monopolize.
No, absolutely.
I'm kind of thinking about this and I know that in prose interiority is important. Like showing your character's emotional state, showing their thought process is important. But I think like in this example, the thoughts are all very articulated. They're articulated like someone is writing out a letter or a journal entry or something. And when you're just like sitting at home thinking about stuff, at least in my experience, that's not what my thoughts feel like. And so when I'm trying to write a character's internal monologue, or I'm trying to write kind of what they're thinking or show their emotional state or whatever, instead of writing like this and making it sound like a journal entry, I try to write thoughts that feel more like how I experience thoughts. And so I don't know if that's also kind of like a sticking point for this. It's just it feels too much like, yeah, I sat down and I wrote a journal entry about what I was thinking about. And yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Heck yeah. And not to bog things down, yada yada, but we'll move on after that for sure. So, you are the Lord of Time. Here's an example where prose has an upper hand. The author can completely manipulate time. Want to speed through a long argument? You can summarize it in a sentence or two. They argued for hours, growing drunker as the sun slipped away. Want to slow down time? You can write an entire novel that takes place in the span of an escalator ride. You can skip past a century in a sentence, or stretch out a second for pages and pages, while visual information is processed together and quickly. Retaking the entire frame or canvas more or less at once. Textual information proceeds word by word and line by line. This gives the author great power at controlling the speed of any given action or scene. In text, we can dip in and out of scene between long patches of interiority, or vice versa in a way that film just can't. Yes, a TV show can do a freeze frame or use a montage, but these methods are cruder than the myriad complex ways that prose can control time. If you are prone to writing real-time, film-type scenes, then in revision, look and see where the story needs all the action and dialogue see if the story needs all the action and dialogue you put down in the first draft. Editing, 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 for sure. So moving on to something extremely similar as well, saying this about interiority. Interiority is perhaps the prime example of an advantage prose as a medium holds over other art forms. Prose allows free and complete access to characters' minds in a way you can't really get with film. Other than voiceovers, film is largely constrained to conveying characters by action and dialogue. Every memory is typically rendered by action and dialogue via flashbacks. Prose can do all these things and far more: stream of consciousness, free and direct speech, filtering details through POV, exploring a character's thought process. We have it all in fiction. That's no little thing. We live in our existences inside our minds. The interior world is at least as large as the exterior one. TV prose does tend to include some interiority, but there is, in my reading, typically little investment in the interiority, and what is provided is often redundant with the action and dialogue. Sarah stared at Tim's luscious lips. God, I hope he kisses me, she thought. Kiss me already, she said, leaning close. The second sentence doesn't tell us anything new. This is the kind of interiority you're offering. Well, little is lost by cutting it. But interiority is an ideal spot to complicate the story and deepen the characters. I think this is what you're mentioning, Anna. If Sarah thinks something that subverts or rearranges our understanding of the scene, or even explores her hopes and fears beyond a basic repetition of the information we already have, that is much better. So this is a thing where we're looking at bad examples of prose, and we want to talk about those things that we can fix. Now, I have no good examples in this, but next week, come back for Anna's talk about craft and stuff like that to learn a lot of the ways of putting these things together. So I do want to call on someone. I do want to know if anybody would like to read a section, perhaps. I do see Sarah's great picture there at the bottom. Sarah, would you be interested in reading one of these? Of course, some people might not be anywhere they can read for sure. All right. Okay.
Hi. Yeah, sorry.
Hey,
I'm
good.
actually on my phone, and
Oh no,
I don't think I can make the picture big enough.
it is.
Oh no, I can. I can.
Oh yay.
Okay, I'll read it.
Yay.
Debts. The casket was closed. I stared at the grain, a soft blonde, zigzagging throughout the polished wood. My mother laid impossibly stiff just beyond the lid. I didn't know why the casket was closed. I didn't know why I was here. Lou? A voice sounded nearby, barely audible in the distance, blending into the soft, indistinguishable chatter of the crowd. I froze in place. The voice was unmistakable, one I wasn't too sure I was ready to hear. Lou, you came? This time the voice came from right behind me. I turned to face the owner of the voice, skimming my eyes over a sea of black gowns and suits and mascara-streaked faces, all greeting me in slow motion. There, standing with her face twisted in disbelief, was my sister. My throat tightened and I paused for a moment. Viv, I managed to choke out. Vivian's long, curly, dark hair was tied up in a messy bun. Her green eyes, which matched mine, the same eyes I avoided in the mirror, were welled up with tears. Her face had aged. Fine lines had begun forming around her eyes and mouth. A painful reminder of how long it had been since I'd last seen her. I had to look away. Oh boy, she sighed in exasperation, pinching the bridge of her nose. I just came to pay my respects. I held my hands up in a gesture of compliance. She shook her head and clicked her tongue, disapproving of my presence. You have some nerve showing up here after what happened last time. She crossed her arms and scrunched her eyes. No. Vivian's voice was rough, strained by holding back tears. You have no right. Vivian, I looked up as a woman with blonde hair approached Viv from behind. Come on. I caught the woman's eyes as Viv turned from me, glaring with contempt. I squeezed my own eyes shut to force stuck tears to fall. They stung with running makeup. I opened them again, and Viv and that woman were gone. They'd walked away, leaving me standing alone in an ocean of hauntingly familiar yet painfully distant faces. I sprinted to the bathroom of the funeral home. I had to do something to calm me. Fear and disgust and shame rushed up my throat like vomit. I felt my cheeks flush, warm and wet as I pushed through the crowd. In the bathroom, I hurriedly locked the door and pulled out the most valuable thing in my life, a little blue baggie. It was only one line. That's what I told myself. One little bump to get me through. Woo, that is some purple prose.
Oh, the adjectives. Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. And really,
You're welcome.
we have all written things like this, like this is picking
Oh,
on people that
yeah.
I read on Reddit, but also at the same time, this is a teachable moment. So if any of these people ever find us on here, really, we love that you put this out on the internet, put yourself out there, people. Enjoy the comments over there on Reddit. In the meantime, Sarah, do you have any thoughts about interiority or the description of every single moment here?
It was a lot. It was an awful lot to process all at once, and almost none of it pushed the story further. And there was a dramatic thing happening, but nothing indicated that dramatic thing was happening. It was just all constant description. And I mean, it could have been a really, truly dramatic and moving scene, but it was so bogged down by the weight of that prose that it was really difficult to get to the emotional truth of it. Even with the twist at the end, there was nothing to indicate that was coming, even though the sister was, you know, pushing back and being angry. But why was she angry? There were no hints given. It was kind of difficult. And I gave it a really dramatic reading, but
Yes, no, great reading. Yay, thank you, Sarah. That was, I very much an example of some of the things that we've already looked at, and some of that repetition, very much is in there. I Vivian's voice was rough, strange by holding back tears. I Vivian, she says Vivian immediately right again. It's just you either can say it in dialogue with description or you can say it's like in prose, but it's just two or three times that this does the same thing again and again. I Does anybody else have thoughts on this? Or Sarah, please.
yeah, no, one thing that struck me about all of the passages that we've read through today, they seem to me like people trying to write in a literary style who have never read literary books. It's what they think fancy prose is like without anything to gauge it by. That's my impression.
Yeah, yeah, and demonstrably read so much, and
Yeah.
I love how you absorb it.
I think I agree with everything y'all have said so far. I think this particular one, like Sarah mentioned, there's no hint about like what's about to happen in that at the very end of this scene. There's nothing. And like, looking back at it, you know, Lou knows why Viv is reacting this way to her or to him or, whatever. Like the POV character knows why Viv is reacting this way to them being here, but there's no there's no like interiority about that at all. Um, and like I think as a reader, we need some sort of hint of like, why is the sister reacting this way? Is she just like a jerk, or does she have a real reason to react this way, And, I would expect that she does have a real reason to react this way, given the end of the scene, but like, you know, we need Lou to clue us in to that at least a tiny, tiny bit. Otherwise, it's just like, why is this interaction even happening? We don't even know.
I think that new writers, I really think of foreshadowing as something that's like big. You have to foreshadow, this event later on. But minor foreshadowing, little tiny bits that you can drop in to, contextualize an experience, are very good. Russell, I saw you unmute for a second. I don't want to jump the gun. If you had an opinion about this piece as well. Or it could be a random unmute. All right. Yeah. Russell. Oh, maybe your audio isn't working. Yeah. Russell, I'm sorry to say, we can't hear you right now. It's your audio must be off. I can see you're unmuted, but okay,
Poor Cap.
we can try again another time, or if you know how to fix it. Oh,
How's it?
There you go. We can kind of hear you.
heard you
Okay.
for a sec. Yeah. Yeah.
Then that's enough. No, I agree with what was said. I just kept looking for why Viv was so mad and what that had to do with the story.
Could be something that they want, the author wants to hold for later, a big thing that they're going to do or something like that. But you have to give us hints. You have to give us a little bit about it for sure. And it's just not there. Absolutely.
Right.
I think there's something to be said for intrigue versus confusion. It's a very fine line to walk. But one of the best ways to do that is to actually figure out how you are hooking in the reader with your intriguing elements, and whether or not they have something, any sort of tether to kind of pull them through, while you bake in that unknown aspect that is intriguing them. If it's just written as if they should already know it, that just becomes confusing. They feel like there's no entry point. And it's not something that we're like sitting there thinking about as readers. It's just something that happens. Like there's no entry point. It's just a wall. So why would I keep reading?
Absolutely.
But you're right there. That's one of the most interesting aspects of writing is when you try and tell part of the story and get them hooked on something without giving away the actual plot until later. That's hard to do.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're writing mystery, it's important to hone the skills in to anticipate what will land with the reader and what will just confuse them and cause them to wander off.
Right.
Yeah, red herrings everywhere. Yay, awesome, y'all. Okay, moving on as well. POV isn't a camera on a wall. Remember that POV isn't a camera. Let's assume you're writing in first person or close third. If Raoul is describing Gunther's green sweater, ideally the description is filtered through Raoul's mind and tells us about his character as well as Gunther's sartorial choices. It shouldn't be a dry and neutral description. Gunther was wearing a green cable knit cotton merino blend sweater from the Gap, but a description from Raoul's POV. Maybe Raoul thinks the sweater is the kind of goddamn ugly sweater Gunther always wears. That fool. Or maybe he thinks it is gorgeous. Now he's embarrassed to go out into the club in his dingy, moth-eaten sweater like some dork-ass loser. Similarly, such details should make sense for what the character would notice. TV prose often has neutral, but also overtly specific visual details. We're told the make and model of the car that drives by, say, or the type of fabric used in every item of furniture. Can you tell when you walk into a stranger's house? Unless Raoul is really into sweaters, Is he likely to recognize what is a cotton merino blend or tell what specific brand of sweater it is? It's totally doubtful. So this is an example that what's his name? Lincoln Michel used in his articles as well. Because after his first one that he wrote, someone decided to come back and bite back at him and say, "Oh no, this is not at all. I am a person who does not read, and this is perfectly fine for someone to write, without reading very much." Would anybody be interested in reading this passage here? Russell? Or it could be just the audio is still on.
No, I sorry. I'm cooking a prime rib right now, so I had to get up to turn the heat down from 500.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. After that first thing, then you got to turn it down and let it sit for hours. Absolutely.
That's right. So anyway, I'm back.
Yay.
But
Do you want to read the passage or?
Oh, why not? I guess this one here.
Okay.
Yeah. Judge Bristol declared her intent via a long, slow, animus blink. Mr. McKinnon, you're directed to answer the question. Her hand inched towards her gavel. I could willingly smash her face with this thing. The court's complement fell silent, save for the sound of the stenographer busily tapping away at her keyboard. The defendant smirked, shrugged, and leaned back in the dock and pushed his hands more deeply into his trouser pockets. The judge raised her eyebrows. I won't tell you again, she said, bowing her head and returning her attention to the vast white blotting sheet laid out on her bench, whatever the hell that is. The eyebrows remained raised as she continued scribbling notes into the far right corner of the blotter. The defendant yawned theatrically, removing one hand from a pocket to cover his mouth as he mumbles, whatever. Head still bowed, the judge stilled the pen. The eyebrows dropped, the forehead wrinkled, and the nostrils flared slightly. Mr. McKinnon, do not try my patience. Not today. Continue in this manner, and I will not hesitate to find you in contempt. In the left corner of her blotter, she made a single deliberate pen stroke, adding a spindly leg to the near completed drawing of a hanged man. While the judge was distracted, admiring the progress of her stickman masterpiece, out of her vision and earshot, McKinnon mumbled his reply. Believing she had not heard his words, the defendant grinned. The court stenographer, however, was watching as well as listening. She read his lips, automatically typed his two words, and realizing the profanity of what she entered to the transcript, released a barely audible gasp. Her face reddened as her fingers reached for the backspace key.
And this is going to be a double one.
Okay.
Let's see here. KB, do you want to read the other half of this? Just because I see you with your camera on as well. That's a good way to get called on.
Okay. Let me see. Part of the top line I can't see. I'm gonna try to read through it. It's got a little message telling me I'm viewing your screen. But let me see if I can work with it. Let's see. McKinnon responded. I can't read that. I might just go over it. The wink, accompanied by an unsavory sexual gesture using his tongue.
Yeah.
Clearly unsettled, the young stenographer shuffled in her seat, pushing her knees together and adjusting her skirt to better conceal her inner thigh. The judge made her penultimate pen stroke, relaxed back into her chair, clasped her hands together, and raised her eyes to the defendant. Michael James Archibald McKinnon, tight-lipped and defiant, every pore of his being radiating arrogance. By his existence, with every breath, he irritated her core. The defendant grinned and cracked his knuckles. So be it. The judge retrieved her pen and added the final leg to her drawing. Justice Claire Bristol, a woman, had not ascended to the higher echelons of the judicial system by being easily intimidated. She pulled her glasses from her face and carefully set them down adjacent to her blotter. The judge possessed exceptionally cold, clear, blue eyes, though her clarity revealed no window to their soul. Scanning the courtroom, her eyes observed everything through lenses set only to work in one direction. Unless she decreed it so, those eyes appeared vibrant, sparkling, but would show others nothing of her true mind. a woman of private thoughts, joys, fears. Her inner mind would never be betrayed by her baby blues. Proceed, she instructed the prosecuting barrister.
Uh, KB, do you have any thoughts on this passage or the amount of times the word blotter was used?
Yeah, Russell said when he read blotter the first time, whatever that is, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. If it's a term that might not be very common, it wouldn't be something that I would use over and over again. Honestly, if I was writing it, I might use it once with maybe a small description of what it is, just to, tell people what it is, or I'd probably just use something else that would be more common. Like you said, with this piece and even the last passage, it's about writing something in the sense that, how would your character describe it? How would the POV character describe it? And I started to say something on the last bit, but I just kind of held off on it. But it's kind of a running problem that I have when I'm reading a lot of first person. With my writing, I have been going back and forth on whether I should switch into first or like close third. I prefer close third. But when I read a lot of first person, I find myself stopping and saying, this person wouldn't notice that. This person wouldn't remember that. It's like, so they're so granular with the details. And I'm like, nobody would remember that. I mean, to me, if I'm writing in first person, there's a bit of, you're supposed to try to be the character, encapsulate the character, and they not that detailed. But I understand it's a tight rope between trying to be literary and give a story and build visuals, but the idea of you're going first person, to me in any way, is still framing it through the lens of the character. So, I just see some of that here.
Like you said, what does your character notice, or as Michelle said in that last slide, what does this character even know? What is the extent of their knowledge about whatever you're describing? And that's a great way to put it. And I'm glad that you noticed. We all do it. We all do it in our writing, but you can see it in your own style, and that's where that editing, that can draft, can take it, and hopefully, get rid of some of those issues. Anna, I see a hand raised. Did you have thoughts on this exceptional document?
My first thought was, didn't this make the rounds on social media a while back?
Oh, yeah, no, this
Yeah.
literally came with, so this was in reply to something Lincoln Michelle had said. And in this passage that this person had put out online and said, look, I am a writer who does not read. Look how well I write. That Dunning-Kruger effect was in full force. But also, it came with an interesting caveat, like a straw man argument, in that the person was saying, hey, it is ableist for you to say that writers should read. What if I am unable to, hold a book? What if I am unable to, see and stuff like that? There are many straw man arguments for saying, oh, this is, a writer does not need to be a reader. But I think that's when the translation to other mediums really helps. If you're going to say, I'm a painter, but I don't look at paintings, or a painter, but I don't care about paints, that's not really going to fly.
Right.
With this writer-reader thing, it is supposed to be absolutely egalitarian. Everybody is supposed to be able to participate. No. Absolutely. But the straw man falls apart when you're like, well, what about audiobooks?
Right. Audiobooks
well, what
exist.
About large print books,
Libraries exist.
What about, yes, saying, like, oh, this is so much money to buy books. You guys are, only
Go to the library.
Go to the library, absolutely.
There's no excuse.
I was recently in the Fort Lauderdale airport, and up on the wall, they had a huge QR code, and they're like, congratulations, you're in Fort Lauderdale. If you scan this QR code, you will get a library card, and you'll be able to read anything from the Fort Lauderdale library. Meanwhile, I got on my connecting flight and flew to Houston, and I was like, that's kind of amazing that anybody who just touches down in this municipality now is a person who can, get a library card.
Right.
There are a number of library systems that allow you to join them without being, a city resident or anything like that. At one point, I published a list of them. I don't know if it's accurate anymore, but I can definitely add it to our Substack. But there are a number of big ones. I feel like the New York Metropolitan is one of them. I feel like not HPD, excuse me, Houston Public Library, not the police department.
HBL. Uh-huh.
HBL, excuse me, also does it. And so it kind of throws me. But one of the things that annoys me about this is that I've worked with people who have low-sightedness, or they have other issues that make reading, just sitting down and reading a book difficult. They still read.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The argument, like, well, what if this? Like, people find a way, and I'm not saying that people should have to struggle to do it, but that dismisses the work, the effort, and the joy and love that people who do have to do things in a modified manner
Yeah.
put into either their hobby or their interest or their professional, like, career, because these are
Right.
career authors. So like that just makes me angry in more than one level.
Yeah, yeah, no, for real. Yeah, but so going back to the passage, I remembered seeing it on social media,
Mhm.
and I didn't remember the backstory, but I remembered reading it. I remembered the long, slow animus
I
blink.
turned it back
What
just
the
for
fuck
you.
is
I
that?
turned it back one screen just for you.
Animus is a noun. It's not an adjective. Anyway, whatever. It's just and like KB pointed out at the end, where we've solidly been in the judge's POV this whole time, and then at the very end there, we're suddenly describing what her eyes look like. She can't see her own eyes.
Mhm.
What are we doing?
It's that camera. This is all
Yeah,
from a camera instead of from
yeah,
a person. You're not even deciding
yeah.
third person, POV
Right.
versus one.
It,
You're deciding on cuts.
Right. Like it would be one thing if this whole passage were written from the point of view of the stenographer, or the point of view of the like the courtroom sketch artist. Um Especially, the courtroom sketch artist, I could see having this whole paragraph about what
That
the
actually
judge's
would have been
eyes look
smarter.
like at the end. Yeah. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's And then, I gotta love the Justice Claire Bristol, a woman. We have to make sure the audience knows she's a woman after we've been using she, her pronouns for her this whole time. We have to make sure we get that in there. It's like, okay. Anyway.
I'll say this. So the
I've never
sentence.
met a man named Claire.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
You don't need the pronoun, just Claire. The eyebrows remained raised, and she continued scribbling notes in the far right corner of the blotter. That whole sentence, absolutely unnecessary. A blotter, by the way, is a large sheet of paper. That's all it is. But it's an older term for sure. And is that from the perspective of the eyebrows?
Does sound disturbing as somebody who might be staring at the judge, because like her whole face looks surprised or excited as she stares at the sheet. You'd be like, oh no, what's coming up?
So yeah, this one, unlike the other ones taken from Reddit and stuff, is actively able to be described as a poor work of writing, because it has already been done thousands and thousands of times by people bouncing it from one social media to another. Absolutely. But yeah, anybody else any thoughts on this passage before we move on?
I like the penultimately long stroke of the pen, whatever the hell that means.
One more at the end. Oh, yeah. All right. So, as just described by the last one, and this is in reply, one of his blogs that was in reply to that specific passage. Repeated repetition and redundancy. There's another huge issue with this passage that one can't blame on TV per se. We learn nothing by the end of the page we didn't already know in the start. The first few sentences tell us a judge is angry at an arrogant man in a courtroom. The rest of the passage simply repeats this information over and over without adding anything to our understanding of the characters, world, or story. Hat tip Shannon, exactly what you were saying. We learn nothing about the judge McKinnon. We don't know what crimes the latter has committed, or what in particular motivates the judge. A good editor would trim this entire page down to a few sentences and ask the writer to add in some text that is both interesting and reveals or deepens the characters and story. The needless repetition is a problem even at the paragraph level. The judge's cold, clear, blue eyes revealed no window to her soul. Her eyes observed everything through lenses set only to work in one direction. Those eyes would show others nothing of her true mind. A woman of private thoughts. Her inner mind would never be betrayed by her baby blues. Eyes, eyes, eyes. 4 sentences in a row that repeat the same information, using variations on the same eyeball metaphor. It is exhausting sometimes to read things like this. As we pop here. So, what do we do to fight TV brain? You write. Terribly. It doesn't matter. And you learn. The practice is more important than any lesson imparted through a lecture. As Michelle said, there are no shortcuts. It's hard to get used to reading if you don't do it often. Just like painting or needlepoint or flag football on Saturdays on the field near the dorms at 8 a.m. It takes dedication. Recognizing the signs is the first step. If your interior voice is in the format of a video game or show, realize that you'll have to translate that to the language of prose in order to have a successful narrative. Let the lessons of being immersed in prose reading sublimate into your practice. Mr. Miyagi yourself. Read your work aloud and share with others. Remember that not all feedback is good feedback and that a consensus is what you're looking for. Some people might love this. Some people might read that last section and absolutely defend it on Twitter. Absolutely. But that's not everybody, and it's not the majority. Read other people's works and sometimes read it aloud. Learn to recognize in others' works what you can't see in your own. Sometimes it's tough to see in your own writing what the issues are. By reading and commenting on someone else's, you can start to break down issues in your own prose. Now, I say this. I'm very much an advocate of that, as anyone has seen writers' lunches in years past. Carry a journal. Start an observation practice. Even if you don't write anything in it the whole day, just the fact that you carry it with you and are able to, in a quiet moment, write something down about something you saw or thoughts about a story that you want to write, that's helpful. It just the access to that. Starting an observation practice, don't just describe the scene when you jot down your notes. Describe your own thoughts, reactions, and feelings to a scene. This goes to Octavia Butler on the bus. Imagine others' interiority and never take yourself too seriously. It's just a little spilled ink. You're just writing in a little journal. There's no need to be perfect in this case. And a lot of times perfection is something that people are reaching for. It's very, very difficult, especially when you're in first draft. So I just pulled some of these from a post. I did this just, like a couple of hours ago. So this is just from yesterday, a discussion on r/writers. How many of y'all don't like reading as much as you like writing? By the way, that guy at the top, it looks like it says AI writing. I actually clicked on through and it's AL writing. I did not get the impression that they are someone who advocates for using AI. But I try to read, and I do enjoy some books quite a bit. I recently read Sunrise of the Reaping and could not put that book down and finish it in like 2 days. So it's not like I don't enjoy reading, but to be honest, I much prefer writing. And it does sometimes make me wonder if not reading more, like multiple books a month, is going to hinder my writing. You know how they say that to be a better writer, you should read more? So that's where that thought comes from. Anyone else like me who has your experience? What has your experience been not reading as much as you like writing? And some replies pulled out of the chat. Writing has the appeal of controlling the narrative. That's thrilling and fun. But as a writer, you need to read. You'll learn more about your craft by reading books that any Reddit post or YouTube video could ever teach you. And a reply to that, before I turned 35, I hadn't read any books other than a few miscellaneous nonfiction. I read on average at least 1 book a month because I felt like I wanted to write a story that's been rattling around in my mind for a bit, and I couldn't figure out any formula for success. It's crazy how important reading is if we want to write. Even with TVs and movies, I see the formula now so clearly. I can tell with much more depth what went wrong, what worked, and why it worked. So shout out to Aster A GT. I guess that's true with any craft, though, when you get into the weeds. Also, buried down in the comments that was not upvoted very much. Crazy story. I like reading, but I'm really particular. It's hard for me to get into a book. On the other hand, I've been writing since I was old enough to type, so 30 plus years. I've probably written more words than I've read from books. Still no completed story to show for it, though I'm getting close. Oh no. Anyway. Throwing it out at the end to Lincoln Michelle for inspiring this, and I really I appreciate being able to use their words on here. You can catch his blog, countercraft.substack, his website, lincolnmichelle.com, and check him out at the Lincoln on Twitter, where he regularly argues with everybody. Absolutely. You can check out some of his novels as well. I've read these two and enjoyed both of them. The Body Scout is basically a futuristic baseball scout, but it's in an era of like bionic baseball players, and so it's hilarious, and also it's a very good sci-fi novel. Metallic Realms is not a straightforward sci-fi novel. It is very much closer to the kind of literary way of doing things, but in that it is about a group. And Shannon and Anna, I know I told you this when I was reading the book. I was like, "Oh my God, is this us? Is this me?" I told from the perspective of one of the people in a small group of sci-fi writers who are trying to work together to write things, and all of their lives that happen around it. So, it's an unreliable narrator. It's contemporary Brooklyn, but it's also space sci-fi and written poorly. They specifically are trying to go for over the top, 1940s style, stuff, but very hilarious, so tongue-in-cheek, and making fun of both writing groups, people who try to work together and create something, as well as the idea of what makes good prose or not. So I thank you guys so much for coming to this talk today, and I really appreciate everybody who comes to Writer's Lunch. Absolutely. Come next week for Anna talking about why some of these craft things that you find if you find yourself experiencing TV brain, how to get out of these pitfalls and stuff. Yay. If anybody has any thoughts at the end, please feel free to speak up or toss it in the chat. And other than that, Anna, if you want to tell us a little bit about your craft ideas for next week, please do.
Yeah, next week we're gonna talk. It is gonna dovetail really well with this. We're gonna talk about some of the things that Sean touched on in this presentation, and some other things as well. So, we're gonna talk about, improving your writing from like the sentence and the paragraph level, in terms of like characters and story arcs and things like that. So. Should be good. Also going to talk about a little bit about self-editing process, but this is going to kind of be like an amalgamation, I think, of a lot of tips that we have talked about on Writer's Lunch in the past, and maybe haven't revisited in a long time. So, it's going to be a refresher, kind of a good, seeing that information again, like kind of all together in one presentation instead of spread
I
out.
was going to say, I think the word you're reaching for is distillation.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. You did mention, excuse me. Ooh, I got something in my throat. You did mention reading your work aloud, which I did want to say that is so important. Every time I finish a manuscript, and I'm going to talk about this next week too, but I want to talk about it now. Every time I finish a manuscript, I get it printed out, which like you don't necessarily have to do the printing part, but I get it printed out because it helps me to have it in a new form, and then I read it aloud to myself. And it helps me catch so many things that I think like if I was reading it silently, I wouldn't catch. In terms of like awkward wording or repeating information, things like that. And so it really just helps you like experience your story differently. So very much an advocate of reading aloud your work. Yeah.
Yay! Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Thanks, Sean.
All my anybody else have comments on things or that's all my Russell and KB. Thank you so much for your help with reading things. Sarah as well. Shannon is probably not here, although she did the polite thing and left herself in the room just to be here to a degree. So
No, I'm here.
thanks for-
I'm here
Oh,
just
well,
watching.
well, thank you to you then too for reading things.
Yeah.
Awesome, y'all.
Thank
Have
you,
a great,
Sean.
yeah, have a great week, and we'll see you
It
next
was
Thursday.
a lot of fun this time.
Awesome. Heck yeah.